Got 3 items on the agenda this afternoon. Got emerging issues in community service, and is that what we have queued up at this point? Yeah, looks like it. So we've got that, and then I guess just one other thing. I was thinking we had a couple things, but regional. Or regions issues, is that the same
We have
topic?
the Affordable Care Act that we're going to talk about tonight
Okay.
also. So the emerging issues with community services and the Affordable Care Act.
Okay,
I
so
think the
those
third
two.
item, Mr. President, was we typically once a month allow time
Oh,
for you all
council
to
members,
discuss
that's
regional
what-
issues amongst yourselves.
Okay, thank you.
That's the third item.
Thank you, I think that's the third item I was thinking of. Okay, so perfect. Go ahead and take it away, community services. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening, Council President, Council members. Terry Higashiyama, Administrator for the Community Services Department. And also here tonight are many of our staff members who will be speaking, but we'd also like to introduce our Park Board members that are here, Cynthia Burns, who's our chairperson this year, Tim Searing, and Al Dykeman. Thank you. I want to thank them for coming out tonight.
Thanks for being here.
And they get to have Park Board Commission meeting tomorrow night too, so they get to do the staff.
Working hard.
So we did want to start out with this picture because it was just taken at the end of the week last week, and that is the Caterpillar that just came in for the inclusive
Cute.
playground, the accessible playground at Meadowcrest. So it's the first large piece that's come in and set in. It's the very start, but we wanted to throw it in so you could just see it.
Where is it?
It's up in the park site.
Is it? Because I
Yes.
just drove by there a couple hours
Yeah,
ago.
I drove by and didn't notice that it must be covered up
So
or
we want to
something.
keep it protected while we're working on all the other things going on. But I want to thank Todd Black and Leslie Bedlock who went up and got a picture so we could just show you that it had arrived. And it is a marvelous piece. So was that?
So you're saying Marcy has to wait to play on it?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Until rain comes.
It's still like getting through the process of getting everything set up. We did have an interesting scenario, is the fact that as we were waiting for our concrete to come, we didn't plan on the fact that all the concrete is going downtown for the tunnel. And we didn't think about that and didn't know that would be an issue. So sometimes when you plan things to the best of your ability,
I
you
see.
don't get to control everything. But
Yeah.
we're waiting for our turn, and it's coming in, but we're working toward
right.
getting it done. So wanted to share that picture. So getting back to emerging issues, the things we're going to cover tonight to kind of give you an update is the Ivers Kid Valley contract. We've obviously had a great relationship with them for many years. The Cedar River Boathouse, not quite yet. The Cedar River Boathouse, RFP, the request for proposal. The Aquatic Land Lease, which we worked on, which comes up every 30 years, and this happened to be the time we get that done. The Gene Coulon Memorial Beach Park, some of the capital projects that we have going on down there as our park ages and some of the things we have to do. The Riverview Bridge, which is the money, we received money from our legislators, and we'll be talking about where that's out. And then our KCLS Summer Partnership, just some wrap-up of some of the number of books we gave away and all of those things that went on. So just a portion of all the things we have going. We have more reports to come to later from our summer wrap-up and all of the events. You'll also hear tonight during the regular council meeting, the wrap-up on the River Days. So lots of things going on. And also here tonight, Karen Bergsvik will be here, and we'll have representatives to talk about the Affordable Care Act. We know that's very important to a lot of our people that live in the city and how that's going to be handled. So we're going to go through ours fairly quickly so we can spend a substantial amount of time on the Affordable Care Act and make sure you have time for the issues you need to cover at the end. And we're happy to answer any questions as we go along. So I will turn it over to Peter Renner, who wants to go on vacation, but we told him he had to stay here tonight before he could go. So-
And I can't think of anything I'd rather be doing. So, Mr. Council President and council members, the first item is the Ivers Kid Valley lease, and that runs for 10 years, and it's now time. They've been a great partner for the city, as you all know, with clam lights, providing the salmon dinner for the communities and schools, dinner, doing the summer concert series, providing sponsorship for movies in the park, how many hundreds of gallons of chowder they provide for the polar bear dip, and we've got a great collaborative working relationship with them. They love being in Coulon, and obviously the citizens have responded well by patronizing them. So the basics are that it's a 10-year lease, and they pay a fixed monthly rent plus 12% of sales over $1.1 million. This year, we're adding a section in the lease about compliance with the DNR lease that I think Kelly will be talking about shortly. And then there's a lot of other business points that we'll go through when it's get forwarded to the Finance Committee. There's a chart here that shows how the revenue has been developing over the years. They had a hit like everybody else in 2007 and 2008, but you can see that it's been building up fairly steadily. And they are getting very high sales per square foot in Renton. And it's used quite a bit. They can't do any more business in the summer than they're already doing. But they have an idea for an improvement, which is to add an outside grill so they can provide the healthy choice of grilled foods. The most popular selection for their whole restaurant chain is blackened salmon salad. And they've found about up to 20% increase in their sales by adding the outdoor grill in some of their other shops. We're keeping the grill expansion to a minimum as much as we can. So most of it will be under the overhang of the roof, and then the section that is outside the overhang on the roof is only half wall height. So trying to minimize that. It is subject to approval by the Washington Recreation and Conservation Office, because some of the National Park Service grant money was used to develop Coulon in the first place, and they've got a very big concern, well-founded, that people don't get money for open space and then turn it into condos. They're also going to be doing some improvements on the inside of their buildings and adding new furniture. Here's a depiction of the outdoor grill project with the dotted line representing the overhang on the roof. The yellow line at the bottom is a railing. Right now it's all open, and they feel that it will create a better sense of place and provide a little better security for children who are there with their parents. Okay. We've also had some nice developments in the last several years with improvements in the way that we do the waste recycling down there, the tidiness of the when the food comes in and is put away for storage. They've done a lot of marketing to try to improve the business in the shoulder seasons. As I said, they can't do any better in the summer. They don't feel they can, but they do feel they could make an improvement in the spring and in the fall. And we're working with them to try to make those improvements. Now, the boathouse also came to the end of its lease. And so at the previous direction of council, for just about any type of contract that we have, it's an ideal time to issue a request for proposal to see what's out there. And so at the start of this effort, we hired a consultant who's very familiar with outdoor recreation businesses, and his determination, in summary, was that the best use for the boathouse is water recreation. We wanted to spread as wide a net as we could for the RFP, just to see what was out there, and so we'd have a wide variety of options for council to consider as we went forward. He also did a market comparison of revenue, and for a facility of that size with the features it has, thought it should provide about $24,000 a year in revenue to the city. So we issued that RFP last June, and in July we got two proposals, one from the existing vendor and one from the George Pocock Rowing Foundation. I'll talk a little bit about Cascade Canoe and Kayak Rental. They've been leasing the property since January of 2007. They operate their rentals 100 days a year and with varying hours, but it equals 791 total hours of operation in rentals, plus the amount of time that is spent providing coaching and classes. That is roughly 3,000 rentals a year. Most of them are just an hour or an hour and a half. Some are for a week long, but most of them are very short term. It seems that folks have a nice day, they want to do something fun, they head down to the boathouse, rent a kayak and drive it till their arms get sore, and then bring it back. They have emphasized youth development, and they have a very good racing kayak team. The revenue to the city has averaged $8,000, a little more than $8,000 annually in the last 5 years. In part of their revenue to the city is developed by a percentage of their retail sales, and those weren't really ever too large, and they moved their retail operation out of the boathouse this year and combined it with another business they own in Kirkland. Next. So I just threw a few pictures in to show the type of activities that they do. And that they do a lot of summer camp type activities, both. And then this was very touching. They participated in the Paracanoe program with wounded veterans, and very good activity. All right, the other proposal that came in was from the George Pocock Rowing Foundation, and they part of their lease proposal was to provide the same level of service as Cascade did in terms of the canoe and kayak rental, plus adding paddle boards. And our citizens have made very clear by emails to the mayor's office and in conversations I have with them, that they do not want to miss the recreational or lose the recreational opportunity, that spontaneous way that they can go down and rent those paddlecraft. And so Pocock recognizes that, and their lease proposal included it. But they also provide, of course, rowing. It's a rowing club, which is all year round for the most part. They take 2 breaks, 300 days a year. You can see the hours up on the screen. That's a lot of hours of participation by their club members, and they have proposed increasing revenue amounts from $12,500 to $20,000 over a 3-year period of the lease. It's neither one are at the $24,000 that the consultant suggested that it was worth. But, you know, in any type of lease that you authorize, there's always the balance between the revenue that comes into the city and the benefit that the occupant is providing to the city. And this is clearly a case of recreation needs of the citizens having a higher importance than the revenue that comes in. Although the revenue is important because we have bills, we still keep the building up, and we have annual costs that range between $4,000 and $8,000 to keep it up.
Peter,
Yes,
could
sir.
you go back to that slide? And you got capital investment in equipment in the docks.
Oh, thanks
So
for-
how much money
Thanks for bringing that up. They are investing, trying to remember the exact figure, a lot of money for the new kayaks and canoes and paddleboards that they would have to bring in because they don't currently have them at any of their other facilities. They're also intending to spend, Kelly, do you remember how much it was to move that dock over roughly?
It was a little over 8,000.
$8,000, and they're adding flotation to that. They're going to install a boat storage system, sort of like you see at the dry cleaners when they pull your shirts up to the front, hit a button and it rolls them around until they get the one that they want. I think by the time they're all said and done, it'll be into 6 figures.
Yeah.
Pocock Foundation does a couple of other things that are a little unique. Each one of the club members is required to contribute 10 hours of community service in the community where the facility is. And they have an intern program that's quite robust. And a big part of what the interns do is to work with the local school district. And in Seattle, they've been very successful with this, and also with Parks and Rec in Seattle. But with the schools, they go into the schools and set up an introduction to rowing. They have teams of kids who compete against each other, and they give prizes. And then the intent of that is to get the kids to come down to the facility and try rowing for free, just to see what it's like. And if they're interested in it, then they can join the club. And another aspect of the foundation's operation is that they have a very robust scholarship program, so that no child who wants to row gets turned away. And it's quite anonymous, so none of the other kids know who's getting a scholarship unless they choose to tell them. And then one other concern we had was that it doesn't make sense to have two rowing clubs in Renton. And I can tell you that the Renton Rowing Club has been very enthusiastic about the opportunity that could present itself if you approve of a lease with Pocock for the boathouse, in that they would participate in the board level at the foundation, and they would combine their resources and operate together collaboratively. And so I think we'll be pleased with that. And they do similar things with the morning camps and the summer camps. And then the final picture in this presentation is last day of school for some of the kids that they went in and did the introduction to rowing things for. So that's that. Any other questions? Yes, Greg?
I've got about 8. Let me go to question number 6 first.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
So we will be coming back to you with that contract. We just wanted you to know that we had 2 responses and what they were, and that we've interviewed both of the clubs and talked with them, and they did a great job. So we will be bringing that forward through the regular process through council, but we wanted to make sure we give you the presentation tonight. So I'll turn it over to Leslie now. We'll talk about some of the things we have going on at Coulon and the Riverview Bridge. Oh, Kelly's
Actually, it's me first. Council President, council members, thank you. I just wanted to very briefly just review the Department of Natural Resources Aquatic Lands lease that was just executed for 30 years. We can move through that. Again, just a little bit of history. The original lease, as you see, was executed in November of 1980 with the Port of Seattle, and then transferred to the state, to the Department of Revenue, or Department of Natural Resources, who then, in April of 2010, notified the city that the 30 years were up. So asked if we would like to renew it, and of course, we want to protect Jean Coulon Park, and we did. There are quite a few new requirements that went along with the lease, not just the 2-page lease document that was the original. So as we move forward, a couple of the things that were required was a habitat stewardship report, which the Department of Natural Resources performed throughout the park and everything, and then we had a chance to respond and do some negotiation. But the big part was the survey, which you see up there is to survey the inner and outer harbor lines outlined in white, and you can see that which are the state-owned aquatic lands. Encompasses Bird Island, a portion of the Water Walk, a small portion of Ivers, and some pilings, and a portion of the Log Boom, and it extends up north to the end of the park. That is what is considered the lease area. With the new lease, with the survey, which I described as part of the non-water dependent use, is the portion of Ivers that falls within the inner and outer harbor line, which you can see outlined in white on the building there. It's about a little over 2,100 square feet. With the new lease requirements, there is a rent or leasehold fee now being charged And the annual fee is based on the real rate of return. This year, it is about $3,900, and it is passed on to Ivers. And as Peter had mentioned, that is incorporated in their new lease requirements as well. One of the other things that go along with that from the land manager's habitat report is that there are some things that need to be addressed throughout the terms of the lease. And the stewardship measures identify things like replacing some of the treated wood timbers, decking that fall within the state-owned aquatic lands. Those need to be completed by July of 2028, so we've got plenty of time to work them in through the budget and through our normal maintenance practices. As well as fixing the unencapsulated flotation devices out there will be now needing to be required to be encapsulated in UV protective type material so that nothing can come out from those types of devices. We also will, when we do renovation of the docks and piers, it'll be similar to what was performed with the light penetrating material, the grating that's down by the boathouse. There'll be some of that material that will need to be replaced in the future again out. The deadline, obviously not, we can always negotiate, but the deadline is 2028 to have some of that taken care of. And again, that only falls within the state-owned aquatic lands area. And then removing some of the skirting. Some of the projects have already been completed. We've already taken care of some of the encapsulated material. The new log boom will be taking care of that portion of it as well. And so as we do our normal maintenance, we'll be able to complete those items. But other than that, the lease, with the help of our city attorney and Ewan as well, has been negotiated, executed, and is now in place until 2043.
Hey, nice.
Very nice.
Any questions? Okay.
Good evening, Council President, members of the council, Leslie Betlock with Parks Planning and Natural Resources. The first project that we'll talk about are at Jean Coulon Memorial Beach Park. And you might recall that in 2012, we had a structural assessment completed, and it was the first comprehensive review of the entire park. And so while we had done structural assessments of specific areas in the park, this was for the entire park and has detailed information for 18 different areas within the park, and also included an underwater dive inspection of anything in the water. Stepping back a little bit, it's pretty hard to believe that the park, the south end of the park, the south 15 acres, was actually constructed in 1969, about it's 45 years old. The new portion of the park, if you can call it new, is 31 years old, and I think that the quality of the structures and the amenities, especially with the high usage that's down there, that between the cruise and the capital investments that council has supported over all these years, really is an attribute to how this park functions. The repairs are programmed over 5 years through 2016, and in 2014 we have 2 repairs scheduled. The log boom replacement, right now the log booms are wood, and the paver areas in the park. Some of the repairs throughout the park, as Kelly mentioned, are repaired by the crews. The larger, more labor-intensive, heavy equipment repairs we contract out. The budgeted amount for the timber log boom replacement was $568,000. We did put that out to bid this year. We received 2 bids, and the contract was awarded to Ballard Diving and Salvage for a little over $221,000. So that was a competitive bid environment, and we're really pleased about that. The estimated construction time frame is 2013-2014. All work can occur throughout the year with the exception of one portion, and that's cutting the dolphin, and dolphins are the pilings that you see out there connecting the log booms. Any underwater work needs to be completed between July and the end of December. And so we'll try to get at least that one portion done this year. We will be doing some habitat enhancement work as part of our HPA permit. We need to install 5 trees along the shoreline, which is consistent with the Shoreline Master Program that the city recently adopted and also with the DNR lease. So this just builds upon those two. The next project is to replace the pavers that are settling. And this particular project is broken into 2 years. The first section is by the Picnic Pavilion and Kid Valley Restaurant. The next year's portion will be up near the North Picnic Shelter. As you can see from the photographs, there's been some settling. We have $323,000 budgeted for this. We are anticipating a report analysis from our structural engineer with repair options and estimated costs, and so we'll have a better idea of what we'll be putting out to bid.
Leslie,
Yes.
will you be replacing the pavers with pavers or some other kind of a surface?
You know, we just don't know yet. I just hesitate to say anything until we get that analysis done by our structural engineer.
Okay.
See what they recommend.
Leslie,
Yes.
when are we scheduled to do the analysis?
Well, we met with the engineer on site today, and so they're going to be starting that immediately.
So-
We initially thought that we would just do a design build, put it out to bid. After talking to the structural engineer, he said, you know, I think you have several options here, and I want to put something together that, you know, will meet your budget and, you know, better serve the public, and also the ongoing maintenance.
Will they come back to council in terms of us knowing what the recommendation is from the analysis that will be done?
We can certainly do that.
I think that'd be good.
That'd be good. Be good to see it. Yeah.
Thank you.
The next project is the Riverview Bridge replacement. And as you may recall, we were successful, unexpectedly and very happily made known of a $1 million state capital budget appropriation with a $100,000 city match. And we're proposing to use our King County levy funds for that $100,000 city match. And so this project is just fantastic.
Yeah.
So this bridge is actually over 50 years old. And while the bridge is not exactly what you see here, when the city purchased the property in 1979, there was a bridge there that accessed the property on the other side. And repairs were completed in 1980. And then in 1995, handrails and interpretive signage were added when the park was completed with access to the Cedar River Trail. And then extensive repairs were done in 2005 with abutments. The decking was replaced, the wood decking was replaced with concrete decking, and then steel pilings were put in. So even with all those repairs, the bridge was over 50 years old, the in-stream piles were collecting debris, and there's just extensive damage. We unsuccessfully applied for 2 grants, and at that point, that's when we worked with the city's lobbyist, Doug Levy, and lobbied the legislature for funding. We had a lot of support from the Muckleshoot Indian Tribe, Washington Park Fishermen and Wildlife, the Friends of Cedar River Watershed, and the Wyra 8 folks, which I'm sure helped us in securing that funding. So these are both photographs of how the in-stream piles are strapped together. The bridge was rated in poor condition by our structural engineer, and specifically, the structural assembly was compromised due to inadequate lateral support in the timber piles. And you can see that those straps are just having a difficult time with the forces of water that's pounding on them. We also completed emergency maintenance, not once but twice, in 2009 and 2011 due to flood events. So I think the city really put a big effort in trying to keep this bridge. So our new bridge will be ADA accessible, galvanized steel, no in-river pilings, single span, light penetrating, and we'll be doing a little over an acre of invasive plant removal and habitat restoration planting, and replacing the 3 existing interpretive signs with 3 new interpretive signs. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. No?
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And our last item to cover just quickly is our King County Library Partnerships this summer. And what we're excited about is that we had a lot of things go on this summer out in our community where we could draw people together between events and activities and summer festivals. And we want to thank our KCLS partner because they ended up with some grant money that helped us put on a lot of things that we couldn't have done without them. They distributed over 217 books out into the community at some of our events at Heritage Park, at our summer lunch program, and at Highlands and North Highlands Neighborhood Center. We also had the library van to go, which 200 people visited when it was over at the Henry Moses Aquatic Center. We had the library van to go at 7 visits at the farmers market. They did a community booth, and they sponsored a children's concert for our summer concert series. They've also just been there for our National Night Out, making sure they're there. Our neighborhood picnics, they did 3 of them. And then they did our family fun and films to make sure that we were connected. So those partnerships, as you can see listed here, all the ways we connected with them. Again, as you've challenged us to find as many partners as we can to make sure our community is connected, we want to thank them because we've also been able to push a level of children continuing to read and families continuing to look at opportunities to read, have cultural events, which we had to cut in some of our budgets, but they're able to fund through some of their cultural funds. So we wanted to add that. And as I said earlier, we'll be back to talk about our summer events ourselves, from the Summer Aquatic Center to all of the activities that we had through recreation. So we wanted to finish the evening with that. At that time, we'll take a little break, rotate here through and bring up Karen Bergsvik and the group that's here to talk about the new Affordable Care Act, which has been on the news a lot, and we want to make sure that we can answer the public questions, and we'll hope you'll ask any questions that you want to. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Excellent presentations.
Yeah, I'm going to introduce them first. Okay. There you go. I'm Karen Bergsvik, the Human Services Manager, Council President, and Council members. I'm here to introduce 3 people that will be presenting to you on healthcare and healthcare reform. We have Maria Woods, who's the administrator for the King County Board of Health, that will be doing the health department presentation, and she'll be first. And then next will be Ken Taylor. He's the CEO of Valley Cities Counseling and Referral. And then next to him is Elena Goodman, our brand new administrator for the Renton Valley Cities Clinic. And so they'll be going through a presentation, and then we'll be answering questions as we go. So Maria, if you want to start.
And welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Okay. So I'm gonna have to switch with you.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
I think I gotta move her.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Nope.
We didn't synchronize as well as
Thanks very much for having us. My name is Maria Wood, and I am the administrator of the King County Board of Health, and I'm part of the team at Public Health Seattle and King County, who is visiting all the cities in King County to help raise awareness about the opportunities for your residents afforded by the Affordable Care Act, which just was open for enrollment last Tuesday. So we're in week 2, and it's kind of been a little bumpy, but everybody's pretty excited about what's coming. So just to tell you a few things for a quick refresher, that beginning on January 1st, 2014, most individuals will be required to have health coverage. There's 2 options in Washington. There's Medicaid coverage, formerly known as Apple Health. And the state of Washington has made a decision to increase enrollment to those who are up to 138% of the federal poverty level. And so for an example, an individual making up to $15,000 age 64, or a family of 3 with income up to $26,952 would be eligible for Medicaid, so that would be free health care. For those who have higher income, they will be eligible for insurance options through the Health Benefit Exchange. In Washington State, that's called Health Plan Finder, so we'll have a bunch of new jargon to learn here in relationship to health care reform. Through the exchange, folks will be eligible to determine if they're can take advantage of subsidized premiums, kind of on a sliding scale, and tax credits. And the income levels that are listed there for an individual or a family of 3 are for folks who are between 139 and 400% of the federal poverty level. One more.
I'm flunking turning. Okay.
So just a reminder of what folks people who don't need to do anything. If you currently have private insurance, if you're currently on Medicaid or Apple Health, or if you're currently on Medicare, you don't need to do anything. Your insurance will continue as is now. That's right, you're just one ahead of me. There are some folks who will remain ineligible for any insurance under the Affordable Care Act. And just to remind you, those groups are undocumented immigrants, folks who are opting out, who are choosing to pay the penalty instead of applying. And then there's some other exempted populations, including some tribes and some religious groups who are exempted. As I said, enrollment started last week. For the exchange, it's somewhat similar for folks who have private insurance now, where you have generally an open enrollment period of several months a year where you can enroll, and then enrollment is closed unless you have some kind of a life change. Medicaid enrollment will be continuous. For both of those groups under the new ACA plan, the coverage will start on January 1st. So for insurance coverage through the exchange, you apply between now and December 15th. So it's no huge calamity that you can't enroll today, because you have until the middle of December to apply in order to be eligible starting on January 1st. And so, again, typical to other insurance plans, you'll apply in 1 month and be eligible the next, both for Medicaid and for primary or private insurance. You can just go on ahead.
Excuse me. Maria, could you go back to that previous slide for one moment, please? Just a clarification.
Sure.
Okay, so you say that, open enrollment began last Tuesday between now and December 15th. If an individual, you say that from the time that an individual enrolls, how long does it take before they're notified that they're eligible?
Eligibility happens instantaneously through the application process. Right now, the two main pathways to do an application are online. And that's part of what's a little spotty right now, is the state system's not very stable, and it's connected to the federal system for eligibility and residency status checking, and so it's kind of a little shaky right now. But you walk through the pathway, and it shows what you're eligible for, either the Medicaid path or the enrollment or exchange path, with potentially some kind of a premium break, and then you can just sign up right there, and so you'll know on the spot once your application's completed.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. President,
Yeah.
so you mentioned one way, and I work for the state, and so I've been hearing a lot about the glitches online. What's the other way?
The other way is you can call, there is a helpline, so you can call on the telephone and someone will walk you through. They will actually complete the application with you over the telephone.
Do you by chance know that number in case
It is
people who are
in your
watching?
packet.
Well, not for me, but
Not
in
for
case there are
you,
people
for
who are
the
watching.
people at home. Let me find that page. It is 1-855-WA-FINDER, FINDER.
Thank you.
With the system down, we are able to complete paper applications and hold those until the system becomes stable, and then we need to reconnect with those applicants and there's some clearance things as you're getting on the system itself, where you need to set a password and those kinds of things. So it becomes a two-step process if the system's down when you're doing the online application.
Thank you.
Sure. So in King County, there are potentially 180,000 folks who currently are uninsured, who will be eligible either through the Medicaid program or for affordable insurance options through the exchange. So it's this group of folks that we're hoping to raise awareness of in your community and help get them connected to see if they are eligible. This is the Washington Health Plan Finder is the website that folks will go to be able to access the application, and there's a lot of information on the website to help you walk through the process and answer the questions that you might have specific to your own situation.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Maria, this is very small, and I'm just a little concerned that people that may be watching this at home may not be able to see that website. Could you just mention it, please?
Sure, it's healthplanfinder.org. Gov, sorry.
No, it's org.
Law Health Plan Finder.
See, I can't even see it.
www.wahealthplanfinder.org.
Sorry. wahealthplanfinder.org. Page.
There you go.
So here's your two pathways. The Washington Health Plan Finder on the call center, which has been open for over a month, answering questions and started taking applications last week. You can call them and ask questions. You don't have to apply at the time that you first call. So if you do need help enrolling, we have created it here in King County and across the state a network of in-person assisters who are specially trained to help get through the enrollment process and answer questions along the way. Here in King County, we knew that we would have a lot of our residents who need assistance with languages other than English. And so we have been pretty deliberate in developing a network that would be able to meet those language needs for our residents. We really took a diverse population focus, knowing that there's a disproportionate share of folks who don't speak English who don't have insurance access. So far, we've got 500 assisters who are trained and ready to help with the application process, with more being trained, and many agencies taking responsibility to get their staff trained, internal, who have access to those folks.
Randy?
Yep.
Since we're talking about where people should call and go, there's a lot of scamming going on
Yeah.
with this, and I guess we just need to maybe talk about that a little bit, so that I think
Yeah.
the people that need this the worst are going to be the person that are going to be scammed.
Most vulnerable.
The most vulnerable will be scammed, and so maybe you got a plan to talk about that.
Councilman, that's a great question, and I don't think there's a specific answer to that at this point. We will be working literally with people who are homeless, with people who are mentally ill, as well as the many other groups that Maria already mentioned. This is all brand new, and we literally are making a lot of this up as we go along in order to meet the deadline and try to have people enrolled by the first of the year.
Mr. President?
And Mr. Taylor?
I might suggest that some of the things, and that's an interesting observation that does have merit. One of the things that has been done historically as it relates to foreclosure and those types of things is, just a notification to let people know that there is no charge for the inquiry for eligibility. And if something like that, a quick FAQ, or something that you can get that information out so that people know that they're not to pay a fee at all to anyone under any circumstances for the inquiry for eligibility.
Point.
That's really
Thank you. I think that's a great point. That includes, there are private brokers, insurance brokers, who are also, of course, selling their wares through this process. But no one should be charged a fee for making these applications.
That's fine. And if you're over 65, it doesn't really apply, right? It's you have Medicare or something else?
Correct. This-
Yeah.
it's mostly
Doesn't
for
apply
the-
to you, Randy.
Yep. Not quite there yet, but, yeah. And I guess it goes without saying, anybody that's on their employer's health plan can continue to stay on their employer's health plan, right?
That's correct. There was a couple of weeks ago, insurance plans were required for those folks who had purchased individual insurance plans to notify their enrollees that there was change coming and that they had an option to potentially to change to other plans. And so I think that was confusing for some folks. It was really just a prompt to make sure they knew about the exchange and they could shop for a variety of options through the exchange that they didn't have access to before. If they have pre-existing conditions, there may be different options that they could take advantage of.
Good. Okay.
So across the county, there are a lot of enrollment events that are planned, some that are big, some much smaller, some that are kind of embedded in organizations who serve a lot of folks who are currently uninsured. Really, and this was kicked off back on September 20th. As part of the United Way Day of Caring, there was a blitz to really try to raise awareness that enrollment opportunities were coming. We've got over 200 events scheduled over the next few months, more getting added to the calendar all the time. We had a successful event this last Saturday at the Garfield Community Center. We had about 150 people there who came to hear about opportunities for enrollment. A lot of folks who didn't speak English as a first language. We were grateful to have lots of interpreters there who were able to help connect people to where they could enroll. The best place to keep track of what's happening is at the kingcounty.gov/coverage webpage. That has a list that is kept current, kind of divided by area of the county, dates and times, and lots of other information about reform. It's a really good resource.
Mr. President?
I think Greg and I are probably going to ask the same question.
Oh, we'll see. I bet you a quarter. And I really appreciate your sensitivity and understanding of the importance of really knowing how to nuance the engagement with the diverse communities. But I have a question. Are you, as it relates to some of the individuals who are doing interpretation and those kind of things, some of the organizations, are you reaching out into some of these grassroots community organizations that, they are directly tied to the communities? And I think of a community, for example, like a Somali community, where there's various different languages there, and utilizing those leaders in those organizations, training someone from those groups to help you get this information into those kind of populations.
Yes, that's very much a part of our strategy. Public health is fortunate to have pretty deep connections across the county based on our emergency preparedness and other kinds of activities where we're really try hard to get to populations who don't access information or public health or government in a typical way. So we definitely have specifically contracted with 23 organizations to do the in-person assister trainings, and then many other organizations, specifically like you're talking about, with like the Somali community, where they already have good ties and can really take advantage of the trusted folks
Right.
in their community. To
I
make
think
those
I think that's important, especially when we're talking about healthcare. And I'd be interested in finding out how I can know who those 23 organizations are, if that's possible.
Sure, and that's right on kingcounty.gov/coverage. The whole list is there. And you'll see, by scanning the events list, you'll see agencies and organizations in addition to those 23 agencies who have got things on their calendar to do outreach events.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Prince.
so we almost asked the same question. Those 23 partners, are they responsible for advertising these events, or how are these events getting out into the general public, besides the website?
It's, they're doing some advertising themselves. We're using a variety of media approaches. We had an ethnic media roundtable and event recently, so we're using traditional media, just trying to do all of those things, again, that we've learned over the years that are effective in reaching populations in a way that works best for them.
Mr. President? And I don't mean to just keep rolling this around, but as I keep thinking about this, one of the things that I'm critically aware of is the political acrobatics that have been played out on the Beltway in terms of the confusing messages that have been disseminated, and that for just mainstream populations. And when we start talking about people that really don't follow that, you know, they may not have had health care, don't really understand it. You know, I get the sense that there's got to be a really deliberate, simple, way of communicating factual information to people so that they can understand how it can best suit them. Are we doing some messaging in that regard to keep the confusion levels at a very minimum? Just last week, when when it was first opened, there were, I think, 5 million people tried to sign up in New York, and even that was spun in a negative way, that somehow it's not working, when the reality is there's a lot of interest. So I'm just wanting to know if we're aware of trying to make sure that we can keep the confusion at a minimum, and making sure that we're really, this 180,000 people that are eligible in King County, we want to make sure that we're able to get the right messaging to them.
Councilman, one of the suggestions that your staff, Karen, has made to me, that we're actually trying to put together a plan for starting today, is to use the same sort of process that you all have used in helping low-income people file their federal income taxes. And so the city has graciously offered us about a dozen laptops, and we're working on setting up what would basically be a one-on-one session for people to come in and meet with and talk with someone of their culture and their language. Because for many people, they've never had health insurance. They don't really even begin to understand the really complicated decisions they're about to make. And then ensuring that if they do have a doctor, making sure that they end up on the plan ultimately that's best for them and their family and most convenient, and many, many other factors that go into this process. Is quite a chore.
Mr. President?
Yes, Ms. Breyer?
So while you're talking about this, I'm going online on my little iPad and find that your site is WA, healthplanfinder.org. There's a WashingtonHealthPlanFinder.org that is an insurance organization. So, I mean, that's going to be really confusing for people.
Yes, and we're aware of that, and we're unhappy to see, I mean, there's some strategies that you can...
I mean, it's way down at the little bottom tiny print where it says it's not associated with Washington State, but, it's going to be a problem.
So here's some answer to your protection against fraud. We're reminding people to not share their information, to use their trained individuals through organizations that they trust, including our community health centers in our communities, Health Point, Neighbor Care, through the mental health system, verifying that web address of the exchange, to really try not to be fooled by imitations to the extent that you can. Just another reminder that the exchange does not cover Medicare, so for those folks who are over 65, they're not needing to look for things. And if you do find a scam, to report that to the Washington Exchange. Here's a little bit of information that's specific to the city of Renton. Across the county, the uninsured rate varies from 3 to 30% depending on what part of the county that you live in. So the kind of orangey places on the map are the less insured, and the blue areas are more insured. The city of Renton, for folks between the ages of 18 and 64, that's 20% of those folks, or 12,000 people, are uninsured in Renton. Go to the next one. So this is what we imagine once we get, if we were successfully able to get the majority of those 180,000 folks who we believe to be uninsured countywide, that the map would be much more blue. So we're really excited by the prospect of that. So moving to a rate of 1 to 10% uninsured and an average of 4% uninsured, a significant improvement. Here's some of the outreach and enrollment activities that are scheduled in Renton, with some of which are the members of the 23 partners that we have. Some are other organizations. The library system across the county has been extremely generous in sharing their resources and facilities with us, and have a lot of events scheduled in the coming months, as you can see here. So part of our message today is to get your help in spreading the word, and I appreciate that you're pointing to the pieces of information that are most important for people who are watching, for them to know, to be able to get connected. Be looking for a lot of media stories. Another resource that Public Health has is we do have a blog that is keeping the media up to date with current stories of interest and accurate information, so that at least the media, we're perpetuating true facts on things. We are doing more than 30 briefings across the county in cities and in areas of unincorporated King County. Have talked to state and federal folks as well. There is a toolkit on our website for partners, so there's sample materials for newsletters, things that you could post on your site here in Renton. We do have a speakers bureau available. So if you have other events that you participate in or groups that you work in and want to continue to spread the word, to let us know, and we can help broker that for you. And that's the end of my presentation.
Are there any other questions?
Council have any further questions? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Ken's going to do the next piece of it, and Ken Taylor, the CEO of Valley Cities, is going to do the next part of it, as far as what does it mean for some of the people that are hard to reach, and what is he going to be doing here in Renton in particular. So, Ken.
Oh, we're changing chairs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good evening, and thanks again for inviting us here. For the record, I'm Ken Taylor. I'm the CEO of Valley Cities, a Renton resident, I'm proud to say, along with Mrs. Goodman, who is also a Renton resident. So we have a very personal, vested interest in Valley City's success, and certainly enjoy the community we live in. For many years, Valley Cities has had a small, sort of out-of-the-way office over on Powell Street in West Renton. Probably most people were unaware of that. Later this month, we're moving to downtown Wells Street between 2nd and 3rd. We acquired the Allied building and have nearly completed our remodeling there. Our friends at Allied have moved from the first floor to the second floor, so they continue to be there. They just sort of consolidated their operations and became a tenant of ours. Last month, the council and the mayor approved a mayoral proclamation proclaiming this to be Mental Health Month. And so it's a great coincidence that we happen to be here actually during the official week, Mental Health Week. And I wanted to just very briefly remind you and the folks who might be watching that literally 50 years ago, as one of his last official acts as president before he was assassinated, President John F. Kennedy signed the Mental Health Treatment Act, creating agencies like Valley Cities. Next year, we will celebrate our 50th year in business, and we represent one of about 2,500 agencies like ours nationwide. However, we know, and certainly you know, and certainly you hear from your constituents about the many, many people who go untreated. And we estimate that at least 60% of the people with major mental illness go untreated on a daily basis. Probably as many as 90% of the people with an active substance abuse disorder go untreated. We know that about 20% of the returning vets from Iraq and Afghanistan will come back with a severe post-traumatic stress disorder and probably a substance abuse disorder as well. We also know that many of the homeless people that we see here in our community are former Vietnam vets who have now aged and are literally living in the streets. And the last sort of fact I want to mention is that we know that people with serious mental illness die on average about 25 years younger than the general population. However, the good news in all of this is the Affordable Care Act, and for the first time ever, many, many people that we have not been able to provide services and treatment to will become eligible for services. The largest group are single adults, and single adults have been excluded from the Medicaid program since its inception. So we look forward to greatly expanding mental health and substance abuse treatment, not only here in our community, but throughout South King County, where, as Maria indicated, there are tens of thousands of uninsured people, many of whom, when they learn about healthcare and they learn about what we call parity, which is built in, that for the first time ever, mental health and substance abuse disorders will be treated like any other medical illness. So there will no longer be disparate treatment in terms of co-pays and deductibles and limits on coverage. And so we really are doing everything that we can to actively embrace the Affordable Care Act. And part of what we're doing here in Renton is we'll have at our new building on Wells Street a community resource room. We have created resource rooms in all of our offices. We have offices in Kent, Auburn, Federal Way, and literally as of last week in Health Point's new clinic on Pacific Highway in Des Moines. In our community resource rooms, anybody is welcome to come into the building, and they will work with one of our volunteers who will be trained specifically to help them apply for whatever insurances they may be eligible for. This is a really, really big deal, especially when the system is fine-tuned and is working effectively. I mean, we have done whatever we can to promote the notion amongst our consumers and their family members, and we at Valley Cities have taken a stand that we're going to find at least 1,000 people in South King County and help them get enrolled in this process.
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Taylor, I am just curious, you know, I do an extraordinary amount of walking throughout the city. That's one of my pastimes. And I run into a number of homeless people who have the appearance of being mentally ill. It just grieves me when I see them. In fact, I know a few who've been homeless for years, and I know where they live, and on a regular basis they're there. What is your approach to trying to get these people? Because I know that sometimes that they're reluctant to wanting to get the kind of treatment that they need. How do you plan on going about that?
Well, one of the services that we're building into the Renton facility, and eventually all of our facilities, specifically our outreach staff. And when we're effective, when our outreach staff can build a relationship with someone, Councilman, we can do some really amazing things. And in some cases, that takes literally years. I mean, I could tell you stories of one woman in particular who lived in a cardboard box, you know, a big refrigerator box, and she, over the course of a very long time, literally inched her box towards a treatment facility and eventually came inside. And we know that mental health treatment works. We know that people can recover from this disease. We have lots of examples. We also employ peers who work on our staff, who are people who are actively in recovery themselves, who do a wonderful job at being able to relate to someone, whether they're living on the streets in downtown, or whether they're coming out of the SCORE facility, or they're coming out of the downtown jail. It is remarkable when someone has actually walked that walk, is there to help you get a place to live, get connected to benefits, ultimately get connected to a place like Valley Cities, and come inside out of the rain. Some people will choose not to come inside. And that's their prerogative. But we are here in complete candor to turn around what you see when you go on your walks. I happened to see a man walking down the streets of Kent a couple of weeks ago from my office window who was totally disheveled, wrapped in an old worn blanket, talking to God knows who about God knows what, and thought, you know, what have we become, or who have we become that somehow that's okay? Because it's just not okay for people not to get the treatment that they deserve.
All right, thank you for that. It sounds as if you do recognize the nuance of establishing a trusting relationship, you know, however you can, to help to encourage and allow that individual to willingly work their way towards the help that they need.
Absolutely. I mean, it's fundamentally about relationships. I mean, in the absence of those relationships, what we do is far less likely to be effective. I would, if you don't mind, like to talk a little bit about something that hardly anyone ever really wants to talk about, and that's school shootings. And I just wanted to tell you personally about the effect that the Newtown shooting had on me last December. And while people in my position go out of their way to remind the community that not every person who is mentally ill is dangerous, we need to do a much, much better job of bringing people with mental illness out of the shadows and recognize the fact that I'm practically certain that everyone here tonight, if they could identify somebody in their family who has a history of mental illness and or substance abuse. Almost without exception, we know people, and yet we don't talk about it. When was the last time you went to a fundraiser for a family whose son has schizophrenia? Never. I mean, it's not something that we do. But we know that major mental illness, the onset of it, is oftentimes before someone's 18th birthday, and many times, almost 75% of the time, before they're 24. We have so much more evidence and data than we've ever had before, and now when you combine that with the Affordable Health Care Act, and you combine that with parity, I can tell you that I'm really optimistic that despite the red on the maps that Maria showed you, we have an opportunity to do something really good in the future. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is that Valley Cities and other community mental health agencies like ours have been working to get word out about a program we call Mental Health First Aid, which is very much like regular first aid. And we offer this 2-day class, whether it's to city staff. We soon will be offering it to the Weyerhaeuser corporate staff in Federal Way, where we have an opportunity to teach people about mental illness and how they, as lay people, can begin to recognize the signs and symptoms, how they can learn about local resources like Valley Cities, and how they can appropriately start an intervention without becoming sort of junior psychiatrist, if you will. And so I throw that out because I would love to offer that as often as we possibly could here in our community in the coming weeks and months.
Very good.
Thank you so much for your time. Happy to answer any questions that you might have about us.
Questions from council?
Great. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So thank you for having us here tonight. A lot of information to absorb in a short amount of time, but we do want to thank our guests that came tonight, and we hope that the community will look for the Affordable Care Act and where that's being offered. We'll have it on our city's website, and we'll have information at our community buildings, senior center, and other sites throughout the city, so people can gain that information wherever we can.
Yeah, I would thank our guests for being here tonight and for the 3 months of really hard work they're going to put in, I think, as this unfolds, and then the months of hard work after that, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have just a little bit of time, maybe 5 or so minutes, if anybody does have any other issues they want to bring up, regional committee activities. We can always reconvene for that another night. I know it's been a long presentation. So, okay, well, with that, then I'm going to go ahead and adjourn.
Only just to report, just so the public's aware, since it's televised, that a number of you, last month have been to spend a number of hours in meetings on transportation issues and other things. I think as that continues to work its way through, I know you all are communicating mostly on the council, but I think it's at least worthy of note that there are, Renton's been well represented in those meetings, and I appreciate that.
Thanks for saying that. Yeah, there's a lot of activities going on. I wouldn't want anybody to get the wrong idea. I think we have been communicating with one another. So, good. Well, if anybody has any direction they need to bring up or whatever, we can always take it up at the council meeting as well. So, okay. Well, with that, I'm going to say the committee of the whole is adjourned. We'll get back.
Can be a lot of people each doing a little preventing. Puget Sound starts